Like if they want me to play a role of a doctor, for sure, or like a head engineer or a businessman, sure, I can do that. I could want to be known now as an actor that does martial arts, not a martial arts actor, because I feel like if you say martial arts actor, you're only limited to that. Whereas if I'm an actor that does martial arts, that does open the doors a little bit more for everything.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome back. It's another episode of Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio. And on today's episode, I'm joined by Mr. Kim Hoang. And we're going to talk about all kinds of good stuff. He's a fellow podcaster. So those of you who've been around a while, you know how it goes when I talk to another podcaster. It gets fun fast because they're already comfortable. Now, maybe you are not so comfortable in the Whistlekick verse because you're new to what we do. And if that's true, rhyming unintentional, I want you to go to whistlekick.com and see all the things that we're doing for you, the traditional martial artists of the world. We've got events, we've got apparel, we've got training programs, we've got a blog, we've got a ton of stuff over there, as well as links to all the other things that we do, like this show. whistlekickmartialartsradio.com is where you want to go for that. For every single episode, we have show notes, which includes a full transcript. And I'm sure we're going to talk about some stuff today, like Kim's podcast. We're going to link that out everywhere that you would want to find that. Go there, whistlekickmartialartsradio.com. It's also the place that you might sign up for our newsletter. You can join the Patreon. You can see the partnerships that we have, like with Katara. I don't even think this is a Kataro episode, but I'm wearing my Kataro sweatshirt, and we've got a partnership with Martialytics. Lots of great stuff, all here for you. And with that, Kim, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate that. Top of the morning to everybody. As it's during this time, it's early in the morning, but I'm fired up and ready to go.
Yeah, man. I'm glad that you're here. Whenever Andrew and I talk weekly, as you might imagine. And to those of you who have not been around for a while, Andrew is my often co-host, and he's been stepping up, doing more and more and more, and does the editing. He sets up a lot of things, and we talk weekly about the show. And so when Andrew said, hey, your first guest tomorrow isn't a podcaster, I got excited.
Nice.
Because I know that you're going to be comfortable, right? And you know this. Sometimes you get somebody on the other end of the microphone, and they come on, and you say, welcome to the show. And they're like, thanks. How are you doing today? Good. And I sit back and I go, okay, I'm going to have to work for this one. I'm going to have to work to pull something out of you to get people comfortable. And I'm sure you know what that's like.
I mean, for sure, being a fellow podcaster, it's one of those things where, like, being from, your spectrum, it is a lot of things that we work on very hard. We want to perfect our craft. We want to do the best that we can to, give such a great product, if you will. And I pride myself in that, and I think that goes back to two things. One being, a martial artist, of, training in the Mudokwan style of Taekwondo for many years. Because, one of the things that they teach us in the martial arts is to, have self-confidence in yourself. And when you have that confidence in yourself, it's pretty much like, hey, I can do anything that I set my mind to. And, I try to put that type of emphasis in my podcasting, and also being, a local film actor, getting my start in school theater, elementary school, all the way up to local film and being extras in major motion pictures. It just kind of felt like, hey, it works hand in hand.
So which came first, the acting bug or the martial arts bug?
Technically, I probably want to say that the acting bug came first at a young age, because I'm just going to throw the age out there. I'm 47 years old. You know what I mean? So, growing up being a kid of the 80s,
got a year and change on me.
Oh, okay. Being a kid of the 80s, man, I used to watch like a lot of TV as a kid, and what really hooked me on was the TV show Family Ties back on NBC with Michael J. Fox. And seeing him act at a young age, looking at the TV and seeing how he portrays a character so well.
Mm.
And I was like thinking to myself, wait a minute, that's an actual job and I can do that. And I just kind of got hooked ever since, of like trying to be like an actor, and trying to make myself big and successful
Mm.
in many aspects.
Well, so when you talk to actors, and I don't know if you're at all a fan of the show Inside the Actor Studio, right? One of my favorite shows of all time, because you get to
Yeah,
know,
I've caught a couple of that.
yeah,
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
yeah, and to the audience, if you track down the Robin Williams episode, I think you can find it on YouTube. You will find I believe, one of the most authentic views of that man, who is a comedic hero of mine.
Right,
But
for sure.
if you watch that show, you start to learn that for a lot of people, acting comes from something that is missing in their lives. Often it's trauma. I'm going to broaden that. It's that something wasn't here for them, and spoiler alert, um, you're you might not necessarily look like everyone else, right? You are Korean,
Uh, no,
okay,
although I do take a Korean martial art,
okay,
so at least and I do love Korean barbecue, so you get some points there.
okay,
But no, my family is from Vietnam.
okay.
I was born and raised in Annapolis, Maryland.
Okay. Yep. And with the accent, right? It was clear that you were born here, but growing up in the 80s, even though I grew up in the woods of Maine, I was still aware that if you didn't look like everyone around you, that could create some, let's call it, tension, right? So I could
Yeah.
imagine that maybe your desire for acting came out of that, perhaps.
Um, I wouldn't necessarily, you know, go that way.
Okay.
I mean, definitely. I mean, I'm not gonna say what you're saying is wrong in terms of like, growing up, there was definitely like a lot of, a situation where being a young Asian person
Mm,
and growing up in Annapolis, because at that time during the 70s and 80s, it really wasn't, that diverse.
mm,
I mean, there weren't that many Asians there. You know, I just, when I looked at acting, I kind of thought of it as like my way of saying that, this was a cool art form of expression. And
mm.
it was cool how you could be a person portraying another person and showing the world your interpretations of how you think this character can be. And
Okay.
you're either, from the other side of the spectrum, you're either going to like what that person does and how they portray that character, or you might say, that's not really much of my flavor.
Mm. Okay. What did your parents think of the idea of you wanting
Um,
to be an actor? Were they
I
supportive?
will say this: I loved my mom and dad dearly. I think back in the day, even to now, they've always wanted what was best for
Mm,
me and so forth. But the stereotypical way for at least in my culture, the Vietnamese culture, is that when you say something like you want to be an actor or something like that, or let's say something random is that you want to be a chef, automatically they think that's not really promising, because in order for you to be successful, you have to be like a person that works like, for a major corporation, getting, high five figures to six figures or something like that, being like a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or somebody with,
stability. They're looking
yeah.
for stability for
So
you.
for stability, yeah, a career that has
Mm,
stability, and that, you'll be successful in that way, and that you will be financially stable in the long run.
mhm.
And that's all well and good, but I feel like the generation of today, you really have to do what you want to do and what you love. So whether if it's albeit acting, or if you want to be a chef, or if you want to be in the education system being a teacher, you got to follow your passion and what you love, because
Absolutely.
if you don't, you're going to live with regret for the rest of your life, and you're always going to wonder what if, and you're not going to be living your life for you. You're going to be living your life for other people, for the people that wanted to pursue their dreams but didn't, and they decide to push their dreams upon you, and I feel like that's wrong.
Mm, okay. I agree. I absolutely agree. Now, people who've been around the show for a while probably have an idea of where I'm going to start to connect the dots on here with my questions, and because opened up a lot of things that, at least for me, dovetail in with the martial arts, right?
Yes, sir.
Interpretation, artistic expression,
Yes,
right?
sir.
We can certainly see those things there. So before we get there, though, we've got to talk about martial arts for you. When did that start?
I think that what really started it off in terms of like seeing it for the first time visually was, probably, when I was growing up back in Washington D.C. in Baltimore, every Saturday and Sunday they would always have like a, martial arts theater or black belt
Mm,
theater or kung fu theater. So I would always watch it, and I would be in tune to it. And I didn't even really know what they were doing. I just thought they were just guys doing like really cool moves, and and do the yelling, that the hiya and the hiya, or like the whoa, kind of sound effect. But
yeah,
what really secured it was the motion picture, The Karate Kid, back in 1984 with Ralph Macchio and Pat Morita.
yeah.
That really sealed the deal for me.
Do you remember watching that? Did you watch it in the theater?
You know what? Funny story. I did not watch it in theater.
Me either.
And but I will. I will. The funny story is, do you remember back in the day where they had like the old VHS tapes and the
Of course,
VHS players?
of course.
Precursor that there was a thing called Beta.
Beta.
Yeah, Beta. They had the Beta Max and everything, and
Yep.
it was like the videotape was like that, like a fraction of the size of the VHS tape. So my cousin actually pops in the Beta tape. I don't know what he's playing, and all of a sudden, I'm watching it, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, it's the Karate Kid, and like, all my cousins and uncles and everybody were watching it. I don't know how they got it, but
Mm,
we were just watching it, and I was hooked. I was like, wow, this is awesome.
yeah, uh, there was something about that movie. We've talked about that movie a number of times. Been Was absolutely blessed to speak with Fumio Demura, who of course had such a significant role in that film
Ah,
prior to his
rest his soul.
passing.
God rest
Yeah,
his soul.
yeah. I mean, just one
Us.
of the best, one of the absolute best.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Uh, but I describe that movie as far greater than the sum of its parts, because if you break it down, the acting's not good, the writing's not good. I mean, there's the individual aspects of that movie are, in my mind, are not very good, but the movie itself overall is fantastic. It captures something that is lightning in a bottle.
I would slightly disagree
Okay, I
in the
love that you disagree.
terms of that. I think the acting for what it was, I think it was incredible,
Okay,
and for the fact that Pat Morita actually got nominated for Best Actor in
he
the
is a
Oscars
he's
for that
absolutely the
film.
exception
Yeah,
to my statement there. Yeah.
I really felt like, wow, he really did service for the role of Mr. Miyagi,
Mhm,
and as being a fellow Asian actor, it really inspires us, like the next
mhm.
generation, to say, wow, if that gentleman can do it and did it so well, that's probably the way for us. Like, he paved the way for us.
Yeah. Yeah, there's when we go back, some of the older folks that I've spoken with that were around training at the time that Bruce Lee was coming onto the scene,
Right.
they've spoken about the same thing.
Yeah.
Folks of people in the West, non-white, right? Like, and anyone who doesn't fit that mold, watching these acting roles gain some visibility
Right.
was just absolutely so powerful. We talked about it as recently as, and I don't remember who the guest was, when we talked about what Crazy Rich Asians did in the Asian community.
Correct.
Here we have a level feature film with, I mean, there if I'm remembering correctly, it's been a little bit since I watched it. There were token white people in that film, right?
Yeah. Right.
The cast was Asian across the board, and just so great to see that diversity, and finally the world opening up.
For sure, for sure. I think that when it comes to movies like Rich Crazy Asians, and even like movies like Parasite, that won a lot of
Mm,
Academy awards for, like, best film and best director and stuff like that. It definitely opened the door a lot for you know the community in that way,
yeah.
and I'm very glad to to kind of see that the community is opening up and we're making, our own path, and even Hollywood is supporting that, which is great, because you know we want our opportunities as well. I think that it's just unfortunate that we don't get as much as the acting opportunities because there just may not be roles that were created for us, and like, let's say, a leading capacity.
Mm,
And I feel like I do get that, but it's kind of a shame because you never really know, because any actor that has talent, I feel like deserves a chance and an opportunity, at
yeah,
least if for anything, maybe like an auditioning process or something like that.
right, right. It's become there are more roles available now, but there are
Yes,
also,
sir.
because of that, there are more people who want those roles. So I don't know if it's gotten easier or harder. I'm not in that industry. Um, to this is probably the first time I'm going to announce this publicly. I do have vision for basically recreating what the Shaw Brothers did
Okay.
under the Whistlekick umbrella, where we're turning out films quick. I would love to do some of that stuff at Whistlekick, and we're just not there yet. And mostly it's not because I think it would make us money. I just think it would be super fun. And I'd love to give more people the opportunity to be in a movie. Because how many of us, like you, started with Kung Fu theater, etc., and said, one day I want to be in one of these martial arts films.
Right,
So
right,
let's,
for sure.
maybe we can give people the opportunity.
I
So,
hope so. I hope so.
so you saw Karate Kid, and how did that get you into training?
Just the way that I saw, the story of,
Mm,
like, Daniel getting bullied, and then just like learning from somebody that you didn't expect was a karate master or a martial arts master. And, that resonated with me because when I was young, I got bullied a lot.
mm,
A lot of people said, maybe because, obviously being Asian, visually I'm a little bit different. Maybe I was an easy target. I don't know. Still to this day, it's a little bit of a mystery. But the story was that one day I actually got off the bus stop. I just got home from school,
mm.
and I got beat up by like these five kids. Like these five kids that lived in the neighborhood,
How,
and
how old were
you know
you at that point?
I think I was like maybe around like 6 or 7 or
Okay,
something
so
like
still
that.
really young. Yeah.
So like you have to imagine like the 5-to-1 ratio of getting beat up. It was not good.
No.
And then, my best friend, who is still my best friend to this day,
That's great.
was like, saw from a distance what was going on. And he just like intervened himself, and he literally saved my life, doing all these things that, that we would see on, on Kung Fu theater or black belt theater. And I was like, wait a minute, like, what is he doing? He's like kicking like these dudes and like pushing them around and catching a punch and like twisting the arm and throwing them around and so forth. So when the bullies actually, got away, he helped me up, and he was like, "Oh my goodness, are you all right? What's going on, man?" And
Mm,
and I was, at 5 or 6. I mean, your logic is that you're hurt, you're crying, the you're not really calm. And then his dad comes over and wants to know what happened. And my friend's like, "Dad, Kim got beat up again. I don't like this because he's my best friend.
mm,
We got to do something." And that precursor where I went home. When I got to the door, my mom opened up the door, and she was really upset because she saw me with all these bruises and all these cuts and so forth. So my friend's dad basically said, "I'm going to talk to your mom. You go outside and you hang out with my son, and I'm going to talk to your mom."
mm,
So the conversation happened for about like maybe about an hour. An hour later, he actually tells me, "Go ahead, get dressed into something comfortable, and meet me over at the house in about 5 minutes." And I said, "Okay," which was fine because, you live in one house away from me. No problem.
mm.
I go over there. We go into his white Chevrolet truck, and we're driving. And I thought that he was going to take me to like Baskin Robbins to kind of like, cheer me up after, what happened, because, that was like the thing to do, I guess. And it turns out that we went over to this shopping center, and we get out, and he says we're here, and we walk forward, and I look at the sign in the building. I was like, wait a minute, karate, what is this? And I go to my best friend, and I'm like, what is this? What is this karate school all about? And he explained to me, well, you didn't know this, but dad owns a karate school. He's a teacher there.
Mm.
And I've been taking karate for a long time over there. So yeah, I mean, I know what's going on here and what we're doing. And I said, really? What belt are you in karate? He said, I'm a brown. I'm like, oh, okay. And at that point, that just kind of like that was kind of like the sign, like, hey, this is the first step for something that you're probably going to do for the rest of your
Mm.
life.
You're using some details that suggest how transitional, how important this experience was for you, right? How many people are going to remember the color of the vehicle that you drove in, or the make of that vehicle, or any of these other details? And what that tells me is that in that moment, that was really significant. The emotion, not just of the altercation, but afterwards, right?
Right.
Most people post fight aren't going to remember a whole lot, but the way you described it, you remembered afterwards better than you remembered during.
Well, I mean, I remember the white Chevrolet truckers because the fact that I remember when they first actually bought that, I thought that was like the coolest thing. I think that was one of the rare trucks in the neighborhood at the
Mm.
time. So I always thought that that was kind of like a cool vehicle and so forth. But yeah, I mean, it's just those things that details that you remember that you never forget.
Yeah. So you get there, you go inside, and what happens?
Well, I go inside and into the door, and on the other side of the wall, I see a lot of people where what I called, pajamas at a 6-year old logic. Didn't realize it was the uniform or gi, depending on what system, you are, what you call it. But they're wearing the uniforms and they're just like training and they're kicking and they're doing different types of exercises and so forth. And, I was just kind of like entranced. I was like, whoa, this is wild. I didn't really expect this
Hmm.
at all. So, next thing you know, I was just so hypnotized because it was such a beautiful thing to look at.
Hmm. And so some stuff happens that day. I imagine shortly after, you're talking to your parents, or maybe your friend's dad's talking to your parents. Were they supportive?
I think that my parents were supportive in the fact that if this is going to help me to learn some kind of way to defend myself and for me to maybe not be a shy kid and have some form of confidence,
Mhm.
then they're all about it.
Mhm.
Because not to say that they didn't know, how to teach it or how to give me some kind of direction, but maybe it was like we need to have the proper resources in order to, help our son to become that much better. And if this is the tool that we need to help him to get there, then let's go for it. And especially because we know the person that owns this martial arts school, this martial arts business, and we known him for many years, and because we have a good relationship with him, um we're going to trust him in faith that
Mhm.
he's going to do great things for our son, because we just have to trust knowing that he knows what he's doing.
Mhm.
We have to trust that you know what he speaks of and the knowledge that he speaks of, he practices what he preaches.
Yep.
And at this point, we're kind of desperate. We need that guidance so that our son could be in a better situation.
Mm. All right. So you've got the support, you're training. It was karate. You're in Mudokwan now. At some point, things changed, right? So take us through your martial arts journey, and how do we get to now?
Uh well, I would say this. It's probably as common as many people would expect. And I'll be very transparent. When you're a young kid, you get into a lot of things and you have a lot of interest and so forth. Um, I've been in that karate school, that organization for all my life. That is mainly the number one school that I've always trained in.
Mm,
But it came at a point where, I probably stopped training there or quit training there maybe twice. The first time, I was just really young. I was probably at that point like 9. I wanted to get into, other hobbies and so forth. So I just kind of said goodbye for now.
mhm,
See you later. I came back at when I was like maybe 11 or 12 because the bullying started happening once again in middle school. And it went to a point where, I realized it got out of hand and I said I wanted to come back.
mm,
So for the 2 years I was training in middle school, which was like seventh grade all the way almost to the beginning of ninth grade. I was training and I was training religiously.
mm,
And it went to a point where I started like after school, I would just walk to the school because it was like a 15-minute walk. It was fine. I didn't really, it was no big deal. Um, and I quit going into the ninth grade because I moved out of Annapolis, Maryland, to Silver Spring, Maryland, which is more closer to the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area.
mhm,
So at that point, well, there's no way I can go back over there because, being like, yeah, I guess like 13 or 14, obviously I don't have a car and I can't drive and it's a long ways. So, going back, years even later, back in, I would say 1999 to maybe 2000, I decided to come back because I felt like now I'm a little bit older, a little bit more mobile, but also at the same time, though, I kind of had a little tragedy in my life where my mom passed away in
mm.
1999,
I'm so sorry.
and thank you, I appreciate that. The one thing that she always wanted me to do was to succeed in something, and she knew that martial arts was always something that I loved, and she would always hint in some weird way, in a concealed way, you should go back into the martial arts,
Mm,
go back, I mean, or you should earn your black belt, I mean, finish what you started, you know,
mm,
it just kind of boggles me that, you didn't stay there.
mm,
And I just said, well, it's not like I had a choice. We did move away. So it's not like, I could have, drove all the way down there and back. But yeah, when I decided to come back, for that time, it was just like, hey, time to, put the pedal to the metal. It's time to go. Like, I wanted to punch it from 0 to 100, like almost immediately because I felt like I found my purpose and like all the people that I grew up with in the martial arts actually got higher than me,
mm,
and even my younger cousins who started after I did got higher than me. So I
mm,
was like, okay, well we have to go back. We have to do this. And this time I want to do it for me. I want to, have some support. I want to develop some friendships and good relationships. And I felt like, that was kind of like that was my sanctuary. That was
mm.
my church. And it was great. And I just kept on going from there.
Okay. Wow. All right. Just want to acknowledge, losing your mom in your early 20s, that's tough, right?
It is.
And you're just starting to launch as an early adult, and here's what I'm wondering, right? The way you're talking about her encouragement for you to train, do you think that changed your course at all?
I think that it did.
Okay.
Because I'll admit, I'm a mama's boy. I love my mom. God rest her soul, because she was definitely an amazing parent, and she was not only like my mom, she was my best friend, and
Mm,
she always knew that when I trained in the martial arts and I trained in karate and I was doing a lot of things, um, I was really happy. And it didn't matter if I was having a bad day, like, maybe I just had an off day in class, or maybe when I competed in a tournament and I didn't do so well.
mm,
She was always very supportive in that. And I think because of, those times where she was encouraging and wanting me to go back and dropping hints, I think that was kind of like a good ingredient of the reason why where I got where I am today.
mm.
Um, and then that's one of those things. It's like you never forget that. You never forget that. Well, the love of from a mother to to a child, it's huge,
Yeah.
and it definitely did a lot for me.
Yeah. I understand. Okay. So what I don't think we've talked about is transitioning from karate to Muay. How
Well,
did that happen?
basically, it was always Mudaquan Taekwondo, but like
Oh, okay.
it what it was is that I guess the marketing tool is that not many people know like things like hey, we teach Taekwondo, we teach the Mudaquan style, or we teach Tong Sudo, or we teach
So is
this, or
karate
we teach that.
generically, not karate
R-
specifically? And
right,
and one of the things that um, we haven't talked about this on the show for a while, but we've definitely heard, this is before my time, before your time, but
right,
we've definitely heard from some of our older guests that uh, especially in the 60s and 70s and even continuing into the 80s, being associated with Korea wasn't necessarily an asset in this country. That teaching a Korean martial art still, you had people who had fought in Korea and it still stung,
right,
much in the same way that we've heard from folks, we don't hear from them too often anymore, but, 50s and 60s who they were bringing Japanese martial arts to this country. And let's face it, World War II at that point wasn't that far gone.
right,
So, there was some marketing adjustment there. So, okay, so it was always Mudaquan Taekwondo, and to those of you out there who don't know that school of Taekwondo, or you don't know your Taekwondo history, go back, check out Alex Gillis's episode. Make sure you read A Killing Art, absolutely amazing book on the history of Taekwondo. Kim, have you read that book?
no, sir, I have not.
Oh, you got to check it out. You got to check it out. It's crazy. It is a crazy book. When you read it, you will, if you didn't know better, you would think it was a novel because it's that crazy. But the history of how Taekwondo spread around the world is nuts. And and I'd be interested to know your thoughts after you read it, if you do choose to.
For sure, for sure.
Uh, so you're back, you're in and out a couple times with this school, and here you are. You jump back in, and it sounds like you've remained for quite a time.
That would probably be the school I would confidently say that was a constant school where that was like my number one school that I went to. I mean, I would say like there was a time before I came back officially to the school. I might have took like a martial arts class over at the community college,
Sure.
just because it was like a PE elective and you had to pick some elective for physical education,
And you
and I
missed
just
it.
thought, well,
You missed
yeah,
it,
and I
didn't
just
you? Yeah.
yeah, I missed it terribly, and I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna try this. I want to
Mm.
see what it's all about. And it just I guess it was just like kind of a thing where I was like, okay, if this class, if I get one good thing out of it, it's the fact that I'm starting to jumpstart the battery of the martial arts again. And worst case scenario, I didn't like it, and I can just go back to what I've always been doing.
Okay. All right. So I think we've got enough of your martial arts. I want to go back. We talked about your initial bug for acting.
Yes, sir.
and I don't remember if it was pre-show or not. We talked about how you had done some acting in school. At what point did you start working to combine these two interests or loves, or however you would describe them?
To combining acting with martial arts.
Yeah.
I think that I think there was always like an interest of sorts. Like back in the '90s, Paramount or not Paramount. I'm sorry, New Line Cinemas, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie.
Yeah.
With the puppets, like the
Yeah.
guys in the puppets being the turtles. I when I saw that, I was like, wow, that was pretty cool. And I would love to do something like that. And then later on, like I'll even go in the movie period, so you'll understand a little bit, like Chuck Norris's Sidekicks.
Hmm.
I thought that was pretty cool. So I always thought of myself as like, wow, maybe I could do something where I'm an actor, but I could always incorporate some kind of element of martial arts and so forth.
Yeah.
And I think that's how that kind of like strongly embedded inside of me, like hey, maybe I could be like this martial arts actor,
Hmm.
because you see people like Bruce Lee did it, and then years later his son Brandon Lee did it.
Hmm.
So why couldn't I be the one?
Why not?
Why can't I do that?
Yeah.
And I think later on it was just like, you know although that's really cool, and I think that's great that there are some martial arts actors that are very successful in doing it. I just don't want to be the guy anymore to be typecast as,
Mm.
oh, he's a martial arts actor only. So he can only do certain roles or certain movies.
And I would
I
imagine, being of Asian descent, it's even more likely to be typecast in that way.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, and I don't blame anybody for that. I mean, it is what it is. But, I definitely want to be like an actor where, I can do just much more than that.
Sure.
Like if they want me to play a role of a doctor, for sure, or like a head engineer or a businessman,
Mhm.
sure, I can do that. I want to be known now as an actor that does martial arts, not a martial arts actor, because I feel like if you say martial arts actor, you're only limited
Right.
to that.
Right.
Whereas if I'm an actor that does martial arts, that does open the doors a little bit more for everything.
Yeah. We've had this conversation a few times on the show. This idea that because and we're going to come back to why I'm bringing this point up. A lot of martial artists find that expression very interesting. They step into acting, and they're writing down on their acting resume, here are the skills I have. Oh, I've got martial arts experience. And it
Hmm.
becomes very quick that they are typecast in that way. And it almost seems like fight stunt coordinators, fight choreographers end up with their people, right? And so you just move, often, maybe not often, but sometimes from set to set, working with some of the same people, and the script and the scene changes, but the people don't always change so much. And trying to break out of that, if I'm remembering correctly, Rick Worthy, who, I don't know if you know that name, you would definitely recognize him, was on the show talking about how he felt like he wanted to kind of push some boundaries on what he was able to take for roles. And what
Right.
sparked this for me was the way you phrased it, not being so much of a martial arts actor, but an actor who does martial arts. And
Right.
that's a powerful distinction, because a lot of us out, let's face it, the majority of us here in the audience, and myself, we're not actors. We are people living our day-to-day lives. And are we martial artists in the world, or are we human beings who do martial arts, right? And some
Right.
people get really passionate about that distinction. And I think it's important that we highlight that there is that distinction in every way that martial arts is going to manifest.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, where was it? I was going to, oh, the expression piece, the artistic piece. So, I love forums. I absolutely love forums, and that
Yep.
comes up from time to time on the show. Was that a passion of yours in your martial arts training?
At first, growing up, I never was the forms person. I
Uh-huh.
mean, I liked doing forms and I thought it was pretty cool. but I liked sparring more at the
Hmm.
time because I feel like that was, in my opinion, the best way to apply your martial arts knowledge
Sure.
and put it in a real life kind of situation.
And it
I
reflects
think
your
that
why, right? The reason that you started training was rooted in that application. So that makes
correct.
sense to me.
Correct, correct. But later on in my years, I started to have, if I didn't have an appreciation for forms, katas, or hyungs, depending on what system that you're in and what you
Yeah.
call it, um, I had more of a deeper appreciation for forms, and I guess when I was a little bit seasoned, competing, I said, you know what, I want to try forms just for the fact that if I do it and I didn't place, it's not the end of the world. But I really want to put more emphasis back into forms again. Not that I never did, because I think that I did pretty well before black belt. I might have gotten like a couple of second and third places and an occasional first place in forums, and I did well. But competing as a black belt, I was just like, you might as well just go for it.
Mm,
What's the worst that can happen? And I love forums. I think it's great. Um, it's one of those things where I think it's great for building up that cardiovascular,
mhm,
and also at the same time a chance to work technique for technique on what it is, working on different blocks, stances, extension of like your kicks and your punches and so forth, and just analyzing things.
mm.
And I I um I think that anybody that loves forms, stick with it. If you're a person that don't favor forms, I will say this: whatever it is that you don't favor could possibly save your life one day. So just
Yeah.
just ponder on that.
Yeah. I for me, forms competition is the closest I've ever been to acting. And so
That's fair.
that's
Yeah.
where I'm connecting those dots, maybe in a way that others wouldn't. Because I'm trying to tell a story. I'm trying to tell a story of being in a crazy battle and winning.
Yep. Yep.
And I see a lot of people who tell the story and they don't win.
You're still. I think that you're still. You know, expressing and telling your story.
Absolutely.
Regardless.
Yep. I agree.
Somebody, because somebody's watching.
Right.
Somebody's seeing you perform, and seeing you tell the tale in a physical
Hmm.
sense and in an emotional sense too, because there's a lot of you know power and expression, and
Yeah.
especially when you're yelling that "Issa!" How deep and how loud that you scream, that because the louder that you scream, you wake up the audience, and the audience is like paying attention. At that point, you're just like, whoa,
Mm,
you're invested in the story that you're sharing.
mm, for sure. All right. Well, let's talk about your show.
Yes, sir.
What you know put putting on a podcast is not easy.
Yes,
We are
sir.
long past the time when people think that just getting a few friends together and hosting a podcast will lead to money.
Right.
There aren't a lot of things that you can do that are almost guaranteed to make you less money than
Hmm.
podcasting.
Hmm.
Why would you ever want to be a podcaster?
Well, a funny story was is that I didn't really start doing the podcast until like the pandemic,
Mhm.
like around like 2020 to 2021. It was at the time where obviously there was not a lot going on. We were you know mainly indoors. Not a lot of businesses were open and so forth.
Right.
And I was always toying with the idea that I wanted to do a podcast because I felt like normally I like to talk and I like to engage in conversation,
Mm,
and being an actor, we're very expressive in that way. And I remember a friend of mine, God rest his soul, I used to tell my friend John Henderson, John, I really want to do, a podcast because I think that I might be a good fit for it,
mm,
because right now, local acting for me is not really strong, and I think that, I could do this because, it will give me something to do creatively.
mhm,
And, I'll never forget what John said. John said, Kim, if you really want to do it, I think that you should. And I think that it'd be a great idea because, you know, you're very expressive. You know how to talk. You always have something on your mind,
Hmm.
and you're not afraid to really go down that rabbit hole and just speak your piece. So why not? I mean, the worst thing that could happen is that you try it for a couple of times and you find out that it isn't for you, and at that point you can just kind of you know hang up the headphones and the microphone and say, hey, you gave it a shot. And now coming in to the new year of 2025, we're actually going to be celebrating our fourth season coming
Awesome.
up on the 17th, which is going to be uh, this coming Friday, depending
Yeah.
on when this is airing out. And I'm just glad to have been in there for about 4 seasons,
Oh, congratulations.
dedicating myself.
Most
Thank you, sir.
podcasts, to the audience, you may not realize, but very few podcasts make it to 10 episodes, let alone go for 4 years.
Yeah, it's crazy. Call me phony, tough, or crazy brave, but I've always wanted to do something just for the heck of it, for the
Hmm.
sake of creativity, and just something to give entertainment and to give back to people in general.
Mm.
And I think that's important. I think that not many people realize this, but we as podcasters have a tremendous power.
Hmm.
And with power, like Spider-Man said in the movie, with great power comes great responsibility. And I always thought that with my with what I do, I hopefully can be a good influence on others.
Mm.
I could be that voice of reason. Maybe I could be that calming voice that they hear and they're like, wow, he's got a real good voice. And
You do have a
I'm
great
very
voice.
Thank you.
You
Thank you. I
do.
really
Yeah,
appreciate it, sir.
I could listen to you. You should read books. I would listen to you read books.
Maybe something to think about.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, I've had a lot of people tell me that when they listen to my podcast, just that they compliment me just on my voice alone because it sounds really relaxing. And if they were stressed out way before, they're not anymore because listening to what I'm saying, um, it just kind of that negative energy dissipates. And I'm forever, grateful for, those kind of compliments because it tells me I must be doing something right.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Right on. If people want to find your show or your socials or anything like that, where are they going to go?
Well, um, my podcast is called, and not to be arrogant or anything or vain, but it's called the Kim Hoang Podcast Experience. That last name is spelled Hoang. The Kim Hoang Podcast Experience. We're on a lot of podcasting platforms. We are on Spotify. We are on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah.
We are on Amazon Music. We are on
You're everywhere.
YouTube Music and Audible.
Okay. So you should be pretty much everywhere then. If
Yeah, all the major ones.
yeah.
And for those that want to follow us, we are on social media. Either go on Facebook and find us at the Kim Hoang Podcast Experience under the search bar. Um, on um, on Twitter, now known as X, and on Instagram, you can find us under the tag name at TKHPC Experience,
Okay.
all in one word, lowercase letters. So once again, that's TKHPC Experience.
Okay. We'll make sure we get all that linked up in the show notes for those of you out there who might be driving in a car or something and you can't type right now, right? Make sure you do check out Kim's show because this has been a lot of fun. And I've said it many times before. I will continue to say it. Support other martial arts podcasts. If you find those that you prefer over this one, awesome. That's great. Forces us to work harder. And that's part of why we have no issue bringing people to the light and sharing our audience with other podcasters because you know what? More martial arts podcasts is good. More martial arts schools is good. More people doing martial arts is good. And we're going to continue to support those endeavors from people who are working hard and like 4 years, man. That's great. That's great.
Yes, sir. And the thing about it is with our podcast, it's not really a martial arts podcast per
Oh,
se.
okay.
It's more like, we if we bring a guest over, it's because they have a creative medium.
Ah,
It's coincidental that, if you are a martial artist, great. We would love to, interview you. But like, I interview people that are like actors, directors,
Okay.
writers, musicians.
So it's not a martial arts podcast. It's a podcast with some martial arts.
Well, for anybody that is a martial artist, great, we'll take you. But
Yeah.
it's all about like people that are creative, that have
Okay.
some. If there's creativity that is involved in that process,
Love it.
then that's what it is. And if I don't have a guest where I do like a solo episode, I'll talk about anything and everything. I just don't talk about no religion, no politics.
Oh,
And most recently, we have incorporated episode minis where we take a full length episode, cram it into like a 10-minute format, maybe a little less, maybe a little bit more than 10 minutes,
cool.
but it's a cool diversification.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I do hope people will check that out. And I'm going to throw it to you to close in a moment for us, Kim. But to those of you out there watching, listening, thank you for being here. Thank you for spending some time with us today. I appreciate all of you. Remember, if our actions to support the traditional martial arts community means something to you, if our goal of getting everybody in the world to train for 6 months resonates, if you're here for our connect, educate, entertain mantra, please consider supporting us in any way that makes sense, whether that's Patreon, patreon.com/whistlekick, or make a purchase at whistlekick.com. Or if you want the free options, tell your martial arts friends about what we're doing, because we're working hard. We're here for you, and we appreciate your feedback and your engagement. Kim, I appreciate you being here, your engagement. I loved hearing your story. Now, how do you want to close? What do you want to leave for the audience today?
Like my martial arts brother, Terrell Friedman would always say, and it's so true that my my attitude is my gratitude. You know what I mean? And I just want to thank everybody, from all my martial arts family at the school that has helped me to become the person that I am today. I want to thank all my family and friends that have stuck by me, that has shown me, positivity and love. And to the audience out there listening to this podcast, you guys are like the reason why we do things the way that we do. In this case, being a podcaster, you're the source of our inspiration. And I'll also say this: patience and training develops character.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome back. It's another episode of All right, Andrew, here's your outtakes for Patreon. Not even trying. This is what's going on.
From the makers of Jackie Chan and his bloopers are the
Yeah,
whistle kick bloopers.
but if I start breaking my leg during the show, then I don't know. I don't know what we're doing if I'm breaking my leg.
Oh no, sir, never that, never that. Please.
And in 5, 4,